Good morning, Binanceans. Welcome back to Binance Beach. And this week, we've got a very special guest in line for you. We're going to be looking at Bitcoin technical analysis in the short term. We're going to look at a few major alts. We're going to chat ecosystems, and then we're going to look at Greeny's macro view, zoom out and hear a little bit more about how he's positioned for the long term. Our guest today is Greeny Trades. He's a fellow Aussie and he's been trading crypto for 9 years. This is his third cycle. He trades all markets, meme coins, altcoins, NFTs, and he also creates educational content on YouTube for his channel under the name Greeny Trades. Greeny, mate, welcome to Binance Beach. Pull up a chair.
Thanks, Liam. Thanks for having me, mate. Appreciate being here.
Awesome. Let's kick it off. Bitcoin price on the week. We've got Greeny for a green week, which is exactly what I was hoping for. The puns that have come off this should be pretty strong. We're up 1.5% almost to 58K. We've had a nice bounce back off what was a bit of a decline for the previous week and even like a little bit of a downtrend, it kind of felt like. But I'm not going to go too deep into this chart today, because we're going to be chatting a bit of TA on the Bitcoin chart in the short term. So I just going to jump into it. Greeny, how are you feeling about the market at the moment? Are you bullish or bearish in the short term?
Short term, I'm still probably leaning quite bearish at the moment. Still waiting for a few events to occur, such as like rates to come down, the election to probably be resolved. So we kind of know what government we're working for and their philosophy around crypto. Liquidity is obviously a big thing as well for pushing the Bitcoin price into sort of parabolic price action. And I suppose if we do look at the chart, so if I just try and pull that up right now, if that wants to work. Come on, there we go. Yeah, so there it is. So if we do have a look at this, like technically speaking, we're very much, I'm probably short term still bearish if we can flip in this sort of range that we're currently forming here. So I've taken the liquidity event from about, the end of August up here to that massive market-wide dump that we saw across stocks and crypto and all assets on chain, I suppose, but also worldwide. That's the range that I'm currently looking for on the short term. And you've kind of got this trend line so showing a little bit of short-term resistance. Stochastic momentum on the daily is still very much probably bullish, with continuation up to higher levels likely in the coming days. So if we can flip this level and show support along this trend and then along the point, the 0.5 level, then likely we could revisit the top of this range at about 65K. But obviously, if we do fall below the mid-range again, then likely revisit low 50K. Worst case scenario, maybe retest the bottom of this bull wedge or bull flag, however you like to pronounce it, which is very much a weekly, very bullish structure. So for me, short term, still probably a little bit more bearish until we start to flip those sort of mid 60K levels. Oh, Liam, I think you are muted, mate. I think you might have to unmute.
Brilliant. Thanks, Greeny. What are you looking for in terms of catalysts for the rest of the year? What are you looking for catalysts for the rest of the year, and how could they impact the Bitcoin price?
So I would definitely say liquidity injection globally. So you keep an eye on sort of money too. So money supply worldwide, whether that's coming in. I like to track on-chain volume as well. So Solana being the premier sort of narrative this cycle, but obviously the most productive on-chain in terms of meme coins, in terms of liquidity, in terms of DeFi, in terms of development. And right now we still very much are in an on-chain decline and decrease. So I'm still waiting for probably new buyers to step in. I think that maybe occurs once we do start to see rates come down, which is more short-term bearish, but more medium-term bullish. So for me, once all of that aligns, once we know sort of what the government's doing, that type of stuff, then ultimately I think we do push into maybe the end of 2024 and into 2025 is very bullish for crypto.
When you look at those on-chain metrics, I think it's easy to argue that retail's not here yet. And one of the factors that I'm watching for is those rate cuts, not necessarily because I think they're going to be immediately bullish. But when you think about retail and new retail coming back into crypto, retail needs disposable income, and people are pretty tight right now.
Yeah.
And maybe don't have that, disposable income to invest or to DCA in or even to speculate. And so I think that's going to be a really interesting factor when people start to feel like they have more money to spend. And we'll see whether this moves back into crypto. Do you have any thoughts on, retail so far this cycle? We had a big Solana meme coin summer earlier in the year, but how are you feeling about the institutional versus retail split?
Oh, that's such a good question, because I feel like this cycle was front run compared to previous crypto cycles that I've been a part of, mainly because of institutions, right? With the ETFs being approved, with hedge funds wanting exposure to Bitcoin, with governments. I think of like Argentina as a prime example, wanting exposure to Bitcoin. And then obviously Trump coming out later this year, saying that they want to hold Bitcoin, store it as wealth, sort of accumulation to pay off debt. So there's a lot of institutional interest. You've seen, I think it's about 17 billion inflows into the Bitcoin ETF. Ethereum hasn't seen any inflows. So for me, institutions are aware of where this could go and trying to still get in before it is heavily regulated. Whereas retail is still very much, if you're in and aware of crypto, you're probably in the market and have been for quite a while. And as you can see, we really took off like at the end of last year and led into the start of this year with volume. But retail is on a higher level, and you can track this on chain as well with smaller wallet data around how many wallets own Bitcoin. But you could probably see that retail buyers isn't at its all-time highs. Social metrics as well, so YouTube views, content on Twitter, that type of stuff is still very much low compared to the heights of 2021. So there's little factors like that I like to keep track of to see whether institutions are buying or whether it's retail that's actually buying.
Let's zoom out. What keeps you in the space? What gives you a bit of hopium? Yeah, why is Bitcoin something you continue to be interested in?
I think at the end of the day, for me, Bitcoin, probably the longer you're in crypto, the more bullish you probably get on Bitcoin in numerous ways. So for me, it's very much a store of value. It's wealth accumulation. It obviously aims to outpace inflation. It isn't deflationary. It has a fixed supply. So things like that means that I want to store as much Bitcoin as I can leading into the future for obviously my future generations and that sort of thing. Outside of that, speaking more internally, like obviously I'm a trader. I love to trade, day trade, whether it's like meme coins or altcoins, NFTs, if there's enough volume and liquidity there. And I just find it so entertaining that you can make consistent money, that you can grow in communities. You can meet like one-on-one right now worldwide. And it's just that sort of aspect that really keeps me intrigued about the space. And then being someone who creates a lot of content and who loves to educate people about trading or just about sort of understanding how the market goes, liquidity, volume, those types of things. That's what my passion is. And I love to sort of teach people and onboard people to crypto.
That's so awesome. And what a great mission to have. It's something we need in this space. Education is so important. So keep fighting the good fight, mate. Let's pivot from Bitcoin, talk about alts.
Thanks.
What are you looking for in terms of narratives, categories, catalysts? What are you seeing in the altcoin market right now?
So it's been a very different cycle to previous cycles. So obviously in 2019, that was the ICO meta. Obviously Ethereum was starting to cause quite a big amount of interest. And then obviously more recently in 2021, Ethereum focus for meme coins, for NFTs, for DeFi especially, a lot different. Like we've seen very much market. You've seen ordinals and runes on Bitcoin. You've seen NFTs and meme coins on Solana. You've seen meme coins on Ethereum. You've still got DeFi on Ethereum that's dominating. You've got Tron meme coins more recently. You've got Base meme coins. You've got Coinbase releasing NFTs. So for me, I think having sort of an understanding of that, I've really tried to simplify my portfolio this time around. And so my focus has obviously been the narrative, which is Solana. Solana still dominates on-chain volume, liquidity. People are wanting to build there. Gaming, development around DeFi as well is still going very well there. So for me, Solana remains the sort of ecosystem that I want to invest in. So my top sort of plays with altcoins on Solana would have to be probably Radium. That's been a DEX swap. It's obviously got the liquidity pools as well. That I invested in probably nearly over a year ago. So I was bear market low, so I got a good trade on that one, and I'm still holding it. And I think obviously a good competitor to Radium is Jupiter, and in terms of their platform, they're developing it quite aggressively, which is great to see. They've obviously got perps on there. They've obviously got swaps and those types of things as well. So Jupiter is a really good one that I'm keeping my eye on as well. Then obviously, if you want to dive more into the tech on Solana, it would have to be something like Pyth Network, which is kind of your Oracle play if you want exposure to Solana. Then obviously, if you do follow me on Twitter and YouTube, you'll know that I'm quite an aggressive meme coin trader. So I think for me, I think meme coins are just the narrative of this cycle. They're kind of what NFTs were last cycle, but they're obviously easier to trade because at the end of the day, NFTs can be quite illiquid at times. So Pepe is one that I got exposure to. I'm looking at MOG. I'm looking at WIF as those sort of plays moving up into that higher region as we start to see more liquidity enter the space. I am keeping my eyes on AI and gaming as well. If those narratives start to take off and if a potential game really does transform how people maybe view crypto and view gaming in cryptocurrency.
Do you feel like there's an ongoing market for older, more established meme coins, or do you think we might see a similar, I guess, financial nihilism approach to continuing to create new meme tokens and seeing those kind of rise and fall quite quickly? Or do you think there'll be strength in the older meme coins as this market pivots?
From a technical analysis perspective, which is where I always like to sort of base at least one form of my trades, as well as fundamental understanding as well, we've reached a level where those established meme coins, so I think of like Bonk and WIF on Solana, I think of MOG and Pepe on Ethereum, those meme coins that have very high market cap, so these are obviously being like anywhere from 300 million to a couple billion, they're very much reaching really good risk to reward entries for me. So for me, I think that's a safer play than even some of your top altcoins from last cycle, like Cardano being one of those, for example. The charts on something like WIF or MOG look way better than the chart on Cardano. And I think for me, that's where I've really started to place my bets again right now, because we have seen those come down a really nice level, healthy retracement, and they're starting to form bullish sort of structures on macro timeframes. So for me, I think that's where I'm placing my bets. But obviously day to day, I think, like you said, like a new meme pops up every single day. Like, I mean, you've got people doing in real life streams, you've got people going worldwide, that sort of stuff. So news spreads so quickly with the election. So memes and jumping on a new meme narrative every single day is often nearly a really good play as well, to then add back your profits into Solana and Bitcoin. So that's how I like to sort of trade the market in that retrospect, I suppose.
We've heard a lot about Sol so far. I think Max Payne this cycle has just been holding ETH. How are you feeling about ETH and other layer ones?
That's a really good question that you said that. And I think like the chart that I watch for Ethereum is the Bitcoin versus Ethereum chart. And then I would probably back that up with the Solana versus Ethereum chart as well. And so it was about mid-year last year where I saw that Solana was breaking out against both. And Ethereum has been in this continuous downtrend against Bitcoin for about 2 years, I think it is. So I can try and pull that one up, actually. Let me see if I can find it. And then pull that one up. So it might just take a sec. But what I noticed is that there was just lower highs and lower lows for a long period of time there. And so essentially, as you can see, this support level, like I drew this like, I'd say nearly a year ago, where we had this like trend, right? Where it was making lower lows and lower highs for a very long time. And essentially, I thought, okay, the bottom could be around this support level that we've seen way back from 2021, and then obviously multiple times in 2022, but then it failed to break that. We then made a double bottom down here, down there. And this is where I thought, okay, potentially this could be the bottom, because that's a long time sort of support resistance zone from last cycle, even before that, leading into the previous cycle as well. However, we obviously have failed more recently, and the narrative there for Ethereum just isn't there. Like, I mean, you've got competitors like even Say and Sui. AVAX has that development side for gaming that's more appealing than Ethereum. Ethereum with gas has been sort of, it sort of has a bad taste in your mouth if you traded last cycle, right? Because like I remember times where I was trading NFTs, for example, and Ethereum gas was like $100. So like, I think maybe bad taste. I think the narrative obviously was Solana. It's cheaper, it's faster, that type of stuff. So for me, I keep an eye on this chart. This is the one that for me, I would then swap Bitcoin into Ethereum if I started to see this change of trend here. So that's what I like to keep an eye on. But for example, this one as well. So Solana versus Ethereum. This is where I took the trade last year. So it was about May last year where I saw that it was bottoming out and it looked like Solana was going to outpace ETH. So it has obviously, and I think it's done like a 7x from there. Yeah, there you go, 722%. So if you are obviously an ETH bag holder, then it makes a lot of sense that you are down bad and you feel quite bad because things like Solana have outpaced it by that much. So these are probably the two main charts. And honestly, if I look at this looks like it's going to start making new all-time highs soon. So for me, it's really based on technical analysis and just seeing what the chart gives you, because at the end of the day, price does reflect everything.
Fascinating to watch that play out, because I think you're absolutely right. ETH is struggling on narrative at the moment, even though I still feel like fundamentals are strong. I think when you look at the way the ETFs have been introduced, when you think about the way BlackRock is tackling this space, when you look at some of the older, more established DeFi protocols like Uniswap or Maker or Aave that are doing phenomenally well on chain, and yet still you don't have a lot of interest in this ETH token. It's super interesting to me. I'm really looking forward to watching whether we're going to see a significant pivot on that narrative at some point when we see liquidity come back into the market and it becomes less of a either or. But it definitely feels like it's been squeezed between Bitcoin as, you know, the premier asset in the crypto space and Sol as the challenger, which has been faster and cheaper just for users. And it's definitely been max pain being an ETH holder this cycle.
I can imagine.
How do you research alts? What are you looking for? How are you going about finding your next crypto of interest?
So as I've said multiple times, I use technical analysis, and I just studied a lot of trading and did a lot of trading myself over the past 8 years in cryptocurrency, I suppose. So for me, it starts with TA. I then obviously, as I showed you before, compare any altcoin or investment against BTC, Ethereum, or Solana, if I can, on the charts. And then I'd step back a bit and I go, okay, fundamentally, is it the narrative, or is a token building a community? Do they have utility? Are they like engaging people on Twitter? Those types of things. And so I dive deep into any articles that are published about it, maybe who's investing in it. And then obviously the big one is token unlocks too. So you would have seen that Say ran up quite aggressively earlier this cycle already, but then it was quite bearish that they had a lot of token unlocks for holders or early investors as well. So that kind of really shone a lot of negative pressure on Say in the medium term, and hence prices kind of reflected that. And really interestingly, Solana has a lot of unlocks in the new year as well. So I'll be very much keeping an eye on that. Outside that, I then obviously, because I'm in the trenches, you could say, every single day, I sort of understand where metas are, what the narrative is, if this particular like RWA, so real world assets, or AI or gaming or meme coins, what the sort of narrative is. And it is always important to follow volume, to follow liquidity, and to follow the narrative. And last cycle was a fantastic narrative for DeFi. It was a fantastic narrative for gaming tokens on BNB. And so there's so many different things that it does take an active approach if you aren't just someone who, I suppose there's two different ways. You can be more active and follow the narratives, try and outplay the market in a way, making smarter choices, or you can be on the more passive side and sort of just play the long game and accumulate Bitcoin or accumulate the narrative of this cycle, which was obviously Solana. So that's probably the best way that I like to research any altcoins or meme coins that I'm looking for. And then obviously I do dive on chain and see whether there's volume, whether there's new whales accumulating, market makers stepping in, that type of stuff as well. So it is quite a long, extensive process for me to consider buying a particular altcoin or meme coin.
And let's finish the conversation by zooming out. It's always interesting to know how people are positioned for crypto in the long term. How are you allocating at the moment for the next 3 to 5 years?
3 to 5 years is a really good time frame for me because I think I will rotate a lot of profits into Bitcoin. I think I'm going to store Bitcoin because I've seen the amount of interest that we've seen from institutions, from ETFs this year, from governments. Banks obviously will have to adopt it in some capacity in the future. So for me, Bitcoin remains the premier play for the next 3 to 5 years. Now, where I then consider other sort of plays is like we've discussed. If Ethereum looks like it's starting to bottom out against Bitcoin, maybe even against Solana, and that narrative starts to return, and maybe we see an inflow with the ETFs as well, that's also maybe a good opportunity to accumulate for a holder, for a longer holder period, right? Because I think Ethereum's not going to go anywhere. It's obviously the main chain for a lot of still volume on chain for DeFi and that type of stuff every single day. But obviously want to try and catch that narrative as well. The last one would have to be maybe Solana. I think for me, I probably am more aggressive with my Solana bags this cycle in terms of rotating profits back into fiat. But then I could potentially hold a little bit because we obviously have heard that there are rumors that Solana could be getting an ETF, probably likely late next year or mid next year. So you don't want to rule yourself out if that's when institutional wealth starts to adopt into Solana as well. So I think the best play for 3 to 5 years in cryptocurrency would Bitcoin. And that's very much where my 80% of my concentrated portfolio is in Bitcoin and Solana and a couple of those altcoins I spoke about before, like Radium and Jupiter. But at the end of the day, I probably a bit of my profits into just Bitcoin and store as much as I can sort of over the next 3 to 5 years.
Great wrap up, mate. Thanks so much for sharing, and really good to dive into the charts for someone with a strong technical analysis background. It's awesome. I'm going to wrap up with a disclaimer. Please note that this discussion includes insights from non-affiliated third parties and key opinion leaders. Binance provides this platform for informational and educational purposes only and is not responsible for any content or insights provided. This information should not be considered as financial, tax, or investment advice from Binance. Mate, thanks so much for jumping on. That was a great chat. We'll have to have you back.
Easy, Liam. Thanks for having me, mate.